I'm feeling very fortunate with regard to the last couple of films that I've reviewed. First Argo, and now this. Because both of these films, it turns out, first of all, I didn't think I was going to be interested in either of them, and it turns out that the opposite was true. And second of all, we're talking about films that were simply very well made. I was very impressed with the way that Argo was made. It was just a really good, solid film. And this is exactly the same. This isn't certainly not Steven Spielberg's best film, and it's not the best film ever made, but it was just very well constructed and very well done. As I said, I didn't think I was going to have very much interest in this film, because not only have I not really studied American history all that much, but also I didn't really know very much about what this film was going to focus on. I knew obviously it was going to focus on Lincoln, but somehow I misunderstood this and I thought that it was going to be a war story, and it's actually not. This is the story of how Lincoln got the 13th Amendment passed, and that was fascinating to me. It's fascinating because it proves once again that humanity never really changes. He's trying to pass this amendment which will give slaves their freedom, and you are hearing the exact same arguments against that we hear against contemporary things in this day and age, from the Patriot Act to the healthcare bill to the, marriage equality. You're hearing the exact same arguments against these things. It's going against the Constitution. The person who's trying to push this through is a tyrant who is interested only in his political agenda, and he's destroying the Constitution, and he's, it's federal versus state, and the states are losing their freedom to choose. This is exactly the same stuff that we hear again and again and again throughout the course of history, and that's fascinating to me. What's even more fascinating is in one of the many, many speeches that the Lincoln character has in this, not a speech addressing an audience, but a speech addressing his fellow people in a room, he kind of addresses the fact that, yes, he is sort of trying to push the 13th Amendment and maybe using a few loopholes here and there to kind of almost trickster his way into getting this thing passed, because he wants to do this while he can. He wants to do this before he loses that power entirely. And he specifically states that maybe he is kind of slightly being underhanded, for lack of a better word, about this, but it's for the good of the country, and it's for the good of the people. And I liked that because I think, in my heart of hearts, that the majority of the presidents that we've had in the United States who do what they do it because they believe it's what's best for the country. It's just that the country doesn't always agree. So there was a level of honesty there that I really liked. And Daniel Day-Lewis plays an excellent Lincoln in this film. It's it's kind of a subdued performance, but I liked that. I felt like I was kind of getting to know Lincoln not as this major historical figure that we all recognize, but just as a guy. I mean, he interacts with his wife, he interacts with his child, just as anybody would, and I think Daniel Day-Lewis really captured that very nicely. But for someone who has never been particularly interested in politics, I'm aware of it. Occasionally I will take a side, but I usually don't like political. This isn't exactly a political thriller, but political-based stories aren't something that I'm usually interested in. This got me very interested. The debate that was going on in this country so mirrors a lot of the debates that are going on in the country now. And it's just, once again, that wake-up call that we as a society have a very difficult time changing, and we have a very difficult time changing our minds. Change is very difficult in this country because we are so adherent to the Constitution, which is a very good thing, except when you start thinking about the Constitution as something that is completely unchangeable and everything is perfect the way it is now, and to do anything other than what was originally there is to go against the Constitution, when in fact the Constitution is a living document which allows for amendment. And so there's that debate of whether or not the amendments are going against the Constitution, even though the amendment clause is in there. It's very, very complicated, and it's very, very interesting. And this film does a very good job of making you interested in that debate. I think that this is the best film that Spielberg has done in years, and I think he did a really excellent job. Although something that kind of got my attention is that I don't think I would necessarily recognize that this was a Spielberg film if I didn't already know that going in. The look of the film, I don't want to say it's generic, but it doesn't scream Spielberg. It's not a particularly stylistic film, and that's absolutely fine, but it's untypical of the way he will usually direct a film. I don't think I would have automatically assumed that this was a Spielberg. In fact, with regard to the look and the sound of the film, with regard to the dialogue, I think that might be the chink in this film's armor, so to speak, because it wasn't exactly period specific. I've said before that it's very difficult to do period pieces because it oftentimes feels like people are just pretending that it's the time period that it's in. And I did kind of get that impression watching this film. It really did feel like the Hollywood version of the time this was supposed to be set in. And some of the dialogue didn't really ring true to the time period. I know this is very difficult to do because if you're so accurate to the dialogue of the time this was set in, then people might not even understand the context of what anyone is saying. Still, that did kind of get my attention. The performances in this film were fairly period specific, particularly Joseph Gordon-Levitt, who did a very good job in this film of being of that time. And it's such a different role than I'm used to seeing him doing. That was very good. I think there was a very good storytelling strategy here of telling Lincoln's story, not from the point of view of even necessarily what was going on in his personal life. There was that, but it's not really about Lincoln behind the things that he did. This really is about how he did what he did and how he felt about what he was doing and what he thought about what he was doing. And he is occasionally conflicted, but he will press on for the good of the country. Once again, we do get some of the family aspect of Lincoln, but for the most part, this is about why he wanted to do what he wanted to do. And I also think that it was a good strategy to tell this story from the point of view of the politics, rather than just the war, and rather than just the grandstanding of, making speeches about wanting the slaves to be free. This really gets into the politics and how divided the country was politically at the time. And we're seeing a lot of that now, I believe, with the controversy over the healthcare bill and the controversy over the marriage equality. We're seeing remnants of that now. And it really does show that the history of the United States of America tends to repeat itself. So overall, this was a very well-made and effective film, and it's something that I probably would see again. It's a very long film. I will warn people who haven't seen it. The investment of time is definitely there, and I think that if there's one thing I will say, the film could have been just a little bit shorter. It did tend to somewhat overextend itself in the end, and it got just a little bit repetitive, but that's a minor complaint. For the most part, this film was very well written, very well produced, very well shot. Really just a solid film. I'm so happy to be seeing film after film that are just well made. They're not trying to be the biggest films in the world or the best films in the world. And I think Steven Spielberg did run into that problem a little while ago in his career, to where he was trying to make these big, grand films. And here is a film that is just so simple and so elegant and so very effective. So I highly recommend this to anyone who even is or is not interested in the subject of Abraham Lincoln. I think people across the board could be really interested in this. So I highly recommend it. I think you would like it. For the people who did see it, what did you think? Good, bad, too long, too long-winded? Leave a comment and let me know, because I'm really curious. I was very surprised, and I sincerely hope you were too. That's all.